Hey guys, it's Sean. Welcome to your history video for the break. Since we want to get you services and you want to learn, this is the way we're going to do it. So, figuring that you have to, well, you get to, not have to, go to Washington, D.C. this year on the trip, thought it might be nice to tell you a little bit about the history of Washington, D.C. Now, you probably know that originally our capital was going to be Philadelphia. What you probably don't know was we kind of left Philadelphia because Congress kind of got run out of town, literally, by a mob, which is kind of funny because people always say, we're going to run them out of town now. That's when they actually did. What happened was some revolutionary soldiers were upset that they had never gotten paid, and they went to see Congress. Congress, being the elites that they were, nothing bad, did a great job on the Constitution, but just saying, we're kind of like, hey, we'll get to you, whenever. This is not one of our priorities. They appealed to the Pennsylvania governor to bring in the National Guard. The governor actually sided with the people with the mob that was trying to get paid, and Congress literally fled to Princeton, New Jersey. After that, it was probably time to look for a new capital, and people had always been sort of saying, hey, maybe the capital needs to be different. Since it's all federal, maybe it doesn't need to be under the control of the state. So they argued about it, they talked about it, and oddly enough, in a way to make the slave states feel better, they chose Washington, D.C., which was taken out of, I believe, Maryland and Virginia at the time and created into a federal area. And you probably won't do this, but if you're ever bored, if you look at most countries and where their capital is located, it's almost always located in the center of the country because it's easier to rule from the geographic center. Washington, D.C. is about as east as we can get, but it was technically in the south coming out of Virginia and Maryland, both slave states. So that was kind of a way to throw some support to the slave owner side. James Madison in Federalist Paper number 43 argued that the capital should be separate, so we talked about that. They agreed to put it on the Potomac River. Now, during the War of 1812, in retaliation for us attacking Canada and burning a town, the British attacked Washington, D.C. and pretty much burnt all of or most of the official buildings down to the ground. So when the War of 1812 was over, and you may not know this, we've attacked Canada several times in history, and every time they've sent us back over the border saying, go home, eh? Like, Canada has always kicked our butts. Not sure they could do it now, but they do like hockey, so you never know. D.C. was attacked by the British. Of course, Canada was part of Britain up until about 1865, and the British burned the capital. It was actually Dolly Madison who was able to save a lot of the paintings and things. Literally, as the British were coming in, she was one of the last people out of the White House and the Capitol, rolling up paintings out of their frame to keep them from being destroyed. So thankfully, we saved a lot of art that way. But when the war was over, Congress had to figure out, okay, where are we going to meet? How are we going to rebuild these buildings? And how are we going to do both at the same time? So that was offered for quite a while. And it really wasn't until kind of late, 1901, where Washington, D.C. really took on the look that it does now. It was the 1901 Manila Plan that established the National Mall. And the National Mall is the miles, I don't know how long it is, it feels like miles when you're walking it if you're out of shape. But the National Mall is the great green space where you've got the Washington Monument, the Lincoln Memorial, you've got the Vietnam, I believe the Vietnam Memorial, the wall is on there. The World War II monument is being built or has been built. That was controversial for a while. You are going to see a ton of great stuff in Washington, D.C. History everywhere you look. So basically the Manila Plan established the National Mall. And there are two things you're probably going to notice about Washington, D.C. One, it's amazing when you're there, and two, it's really hard to get to. You're going to hit a lot of traffic. And the reason was because it was designed in the late 1700s. The greatest thing for people on horses and carts was to build a city with a road around it and then have roads coming off like a wagon wheel. That made it very, very centrally located and easy. You move over to cars, things get difficult. Those of you from Kentucky would also recognize this as Lexington with the news circle with the roads going off at different directions. You never seem to be going north, south, east, or west, and it's kind of confusing. So DC can be confusing. So if you do happen to look out the window on the drive-in, if you're not asleep on the bus, you will notice an enormous amount of traffic. There's traffic all the time. So that's the reason that was. Now, the White House actually wasn't segregated until Woodrow Wilson took over in 1913. Wilson, who I dearly love for his Versailles and what he had to say about international treaty, he was as brilliant as he was internationally, he was as backwards at home. He was raised Southern. He completely believed in segregation between blacks and whites. He is the president that segregated the White House. He made sure that blacks and whites had separate places. They could not go to the same bathroom. This goes up into the 1950s when the federal government actually finally desegregates. And one of the reasons of desegregation was World War II. And the history class talked about that today, actually. Black soldiers went over, fought just as hard, saved the world from Hitler, expecting to come home as heroes. And in Europe, they were heroes and they were treated equally. They get home, they're still heroes, but it's go back to your own theater, sit in the balcony, sit in the back of the bus. And I can't imagine how frustrating that would be to give up your life for a country that then says you're not good enough to be everywhere here. So Washington, D.C. desegregated through the 40s and 50s and 60s. And finally with the Civil Rights Act in 1964, you had the end of desegregation. Since then, they have continued to open several new things. I know last time I was there, the Native American Museum was open. It is fantastic. Not sure you're probably going to get there. If you get a chance, go to the Holocaust Museum. Not sure if you guys are going to go this time or not. It's incredibly moving. But just make sure you're looking around. You're going to see the Washington Monument. That's the tall, pointy thing. You're going to see the Lincoln Memorial. That's the one that looks like Lincoln. You'll recognize it. And don't spend too much time hitting all the pokey stops. Look up and make sure you enjoy and learn the history as well. Hope you have a great break. Take care, and I will see you guys on Monday for finals week.